The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Olivia Hart stared at the official government seal, her hands trembling as she stood in the cramped mailroom of her Brooklyn apartment building. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made her stomach turn. She already knew what it said. Had known for weeks, really, ever since her visa extension was denied. Her fingers fumbled with the paper, tearing it slightly as she pulled out the letter. The words swam before her eyes, but 3 stood out with brutal clarity. 30 days remaining. 30 days until everything she'd built over 6 years collapsed. The mailroom felt suddenly too small, the walls pressing in. She clutched the letter against her chest and climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment, her sneakers squeaking against the worn linoleum. Each step felt heavier than the last. Ruby looked up from her laptop when Olivia entered, her expression shifting immediately from concentration to concern. That bad? Olivia handed her the letter without speaking. Her throat had closed up, making words impossible. Ruby read it quickly, her dark eyes scanning the bureaucratic language. She set it down on their second-hand coffee table with careful precision, as if the paper itself might shatter. Okay, we'll figure this out. There has to be another option. What about that lawyer your firm mentioned? $3,000 retainer, no guarantee. Olivia's voice came out flat, emotionless. She'd cried herself empty last night, anticipating this. My savings are gone after the last application fee. She walked to the window overlooking the street below. Brooklyn stretched out before her, the neighborhood she'd learned to call home. The bodega on the corner where Luis always saved her the fresh bagels. The community garden she'd helped design last summer. The coffee shop where she worked on sketches every Sunday morning. Her entire life contained in 30 days. Ruby came to stand beside her, their shoulders touching. What about the project, the community center design? That hurt most of all. Olivia closed her eyes against the sting of fresh tears. Henderson said if my visa situation isn't resolved, they'll have to reassign it. Can't have an architect who won't be in the country to see it through. 6 months of work, her first major project. The design that proved she belonged here, that she could create something meaningful. Gone. Her phone buzzed, a text from her boss. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. We need to discuss your status. I need coffee, Olivia said suddenly. I can't think. I need to get out of here. Ruby grabbed her jacket. I'm coming with you. No, I need to be alone for a bit. I'll be okay. It was a lie, but Ruby seemed to understand. She squeezed Olivia's hand and let her go. The November air bit through Olivia's thin sweater as she walked toward the coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Union. Her mind raced through impossible calculations. Could she marry someone? The thought felt desperate and ridiculous. She didn't even have a boyfriend. Her last relationship had ended 8 months ago when Eric moved to California. The coffee shop was moderately crowded, filled with the usual mixture of students and freelancers hunched over laptops. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled, creating a soundtrack of normalcy that felt absurd given the chaos in her head. She ordered her usual latte and turned too quickly, colliding with someone behind her. Coffee exploded between them. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The words tumbled out as she grabbed napkins, dabbing uselessly at the spreading brown stain on the man's expensive-looking gray shirt. Hey, it's okay, really. His voice was deeper than she expected, touched with amusement rather than anger. She looked up. Hazel eyes met hers, warm despite the coffee disaster. He was tall, she noticed absurdly, with dark wavy hair that looked deliberately casual and a jawline that belonged in advertisements. He was smiling at her with genuine warmth, not the polite grimace she deserved. I wasn't watching where I was going, Olivia said, still clutching the useless napkins. I'll pay for dry cleaning, obviously. Here, let me get your information. She started patting her pockets for her phone, realized it was in her jacket, and felt the entire situation spiral into farce. Seriously, don't worry about it. He took the napkins from her gently and wiped at his shirt with resigned efficiency. I've had worse happen on a Tuesday. The barista called out another order. Someone's phone rang. Life continued around them, while Olivia stood frozen, suddenly aware that she was staring. I really am sorry, she managed. Forgiven. He grinned, and something about it made her chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with deportation notices. Though, if you're feeling guilty, you could let me buy you a replacement coffee, since yours is currently on my shirt. She should say no. She should go home and call lawyers she couldn't afford and figure out how to pack 6 years of life. Okay, she heard her say instead. They sat by the window, 2 fresh lattes between them. He introduced himself as James Fitzgerald, and she noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, the quality of his jeans despite their casual appearance. Money, her brain catalogued automatically. Old or new, she couldn't tell. So, what has you so distracted you're weaponizing coffee? He asked, wrapping his hands around his cup. The question was light, but his eyes were attentive in a way that made her want to answer honestly. Visa problems, she said, surprised by her own candor. I'm British. My extension was denied. I have 30 days. 30 days to leave? 30 days until everything I've built here disappears. She laughed, but it came out bitter. Sorry, you asked. No, that's terrible. Do you have options? Not really, unless I find an American to marry in the next month. I'm going back to London. She meant it as a joke, the kind of dark humor that made impossible situations bearable. But James went very still, his hazel eyes studying her with sudden intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. What if you did? Did what? Found someone to marry? The coffee shop noise faded to background static. Olivia stared at him, trying to determine if he was mocking her. I'm kidding, she said carefully, obviously. I'm not. James leaned forward, his voice dropping to something private meant only for her. If I helped you? Her heart kicked against her ribs. I don't. We just met. You don't even know me. No, he agreed, but I know what it's like to be desperate, and I know what it's like to need a favor. What kind of favor requires a fake marriage? James smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. The kind that gets my mother off my back about settling down. The kind that solves both our problems. It was insane, completely insane. Olivia opened her mouth to say no, to laugh it off and walk away from this strange, beautiful man with his impossible offer. Her phone buzzed again. Henderson, also bring documentation of your visa status to meeting. She looked at James Fitzgerald, at his steady gaze and expensive watch and the coffee stains she'd put on his shirt. If I said yes, she heard herself whisper, how would it even work? His smile widened, genuine this time. Leave that to me. Outside the window, Brooklyn moved on, unaware that Olivia Hart's life had just tilted sideways into something she couldn't begin to understand. The penthouse was nothing like Olivia expected. She'd imagined sterile, modern luxury, all glass and steel and uncomfortable furniture that cost more than her monthly rent. Instead, James's apartment felt surprisingly lived in, with book-filled shelves lining exposed brick walls and a worn leather couch that looked actually sat upon. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city lights creating a glittering backdrop that took her breath away. So, James said, closing the door behind them, welcome to your temporary home. 3 days had passed since the coffee shop. 3 days of frantic phone calls with lawyers who'd confirmed what James already knew. A marriage-based green card application was her fastest option. 3 days of Olivia ping-ponging between hope and terror. Now she stood in his living room, overnight bag clutched in white-knuckled hands, trying to process that she'd agreed to this insanity. Guest room is down that hall, James continued, moving past her toward the kitchen. Bathrooms attached. Make yourself comfortable. Want something to drink? The casualness of it threw her. He spoke as if people agreed to marry him every week. Water's fine. He filled 2 glasses while she gravitated toward the windows, drawn by the view. Brooklyn spread out across the river, and somewhere in that sprawl of lights was her apartment, her real life, growing more distant by the moment. We should start with basics, James said, handing her a glass. Things immigration will ask. How we met, how long we've been together, why we decided to get married. Olivia took a sip, buying herself time. You've done research. I'm thorough.
He settled onto the couch, pulling out a laptop. Sit, let's build our story. She perched on the opposite end, maintaining careful distance. This close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight stubble along his jaw. He smelled like expensive cologne, and something warmer, more personal. Focus, she told herself firmly. We met at a gallery opening, James said, typing. 8 months ago, mutual friend introduced us. You were looking at a photograph of the Brooklyn Bridge. I made some comment about the architecture. We started talking. Why a gallery? Because you're an architect. You appreciate design. It's believable we'd be at the same event. He glanced up. Unless you hate art? No, Actually, that works. Despite everything, Olivia felt a smile tugging at her lips. You're good at this. I'm good at problem solving. It's what I do. He returned to typing. First date was coffee, because that's actually how we met. Second date was dinner at a small Italian place in the West Village. Low-key, intimate. We talked for hours. What did we talk about? James paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What do you want to have talked about? The question felt heavier than it should. Olivia thought about Eric, about the surface-level conversations that had characterized their relationship. Safe topics. Comfortable silences that were really just empty spaces. Our families, she said quietly. Childhood memories. The things that shaped us. Something shifted in James's expression. Okay, then that's what we talked about. He set the laptop aside. So, tell me, what shaped Olivia Hart? We're practicing? We're learning each other. There's a difference. She wanted to deflect, to keep this transactional and safe. But his hazel eyes held genuine curiosity, and somehow that made honesty feel possible. My parents died when I was 19, she began. Car accident, very sudden. I was at university in London, studying architecture because my dad was a contractor, and I grew up watching him build things. The words came easier than expected. After they died, everything in London felt haunted. Every street corner had a memory. I needed distance, needed to create something new somewhere they'd never been. James listened without interrupting, his focus complete. So I applied to programs in New York, got accepted, came over on a student visa 6 years ago, and just stayed. Built a life they'd never touched. She laughed softly. Sounds dramatic when I say it out loud. It sounds like survival, James said. There's nothing dramatic about that. The understanding in his voice caught her off guard. She took another sip of water, throat suddenly tight. Your turn. What's your tragic backstory? He smiled, but it looked tired. Depends who you ask. My mother thinks I'm wasting my potential playing with computers. My business partner thinks I'm too cautious after my last relationship imploded. He leaned back against the couch cushions. I started my company 7 years ago. Security software, boring technical stuff. It did well, really well. Built everything from nothing. Impressive? Maybe, or maybe I just threw myself into work because it was safer than dealing with actual people. The admission seemed surprising him. He straightened abruptly. Anyway, they'll ask about my ex. Her name was Victoria. We were engaged 5 years ago. She left at the rehearsal dinner. That's all you need to know. The shift was so sudden it gave Olivia whiplash. She wanted to push, to ask why Victoria left, but James's expression had shuttered closed. Okay, she said instead. What else do we need to cover? They spent the next 2 hours building their fictional relationship. Favorite restaurants became Lombardi's Pizza and a Thai place in Brooklyn whose name James had to look up. Their song was something by The National because James actually listened to them and Olivia didn't.
Hate it. They'd gotten engaged last month on a Sunday morning. No ring yet because James wanted her to help choose. Except that part wasn't true. Actually, James said, standing and walking to a drawer in the kitchen, I already got this. He pulled out a small velvet box. Olivia's heart performed an acrobatic routine in her chest. James, you didn't have to. It needs to look real. He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single diamond. Elegant, understated, exactly what she would have chosen. Try it on. She extended her hand, suddenly aware of how much it trembled. James slid the ring onto her finger with surprising gentleness, his skin warm against hers. It fit perfectly. How did you? She started. I guessed. Got lucky. He was still holding her hand, his thumb brushing absently across her knuckles. If you hate it, we can exchange it. No, it's beautiful. They stood there in his kitchen, hands linked, the diamond catching the light. This was fake, Olivia reminded herself, a performance, a solution to mutual problems. So why did her pulse race like it meant something real? James seemed to realize he was still holding her hand. He released it quickly, stepping back. It's late. We should both get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Application appointment, then dinner with my mother. He grinned at her expression. Kidding, sort of. Actually, Nathan wants to meet you, my business partner. He's suspicious. Of course he is. We just got engaged and he's never heard of me. Exactly. So tomorrow we practice being convincing. James headed toward the hallway, then paused. Olivia, thank you for agreeing to this. I know it's asking a lot. She twisted the ring on her finger, feeling its unfamiliar weight. You're saving my life. I think that makes us even. After he disappeared into his room, Olivia stood alone in the living room, surrounded by his books and his furniture and the spectacular view of a city she was fighting to stay in. She looked down at the ring on her hand. 30 days had become possibility. Terror had become strange hope. And James Fitzgerald, with his haunted eyes and careful distance, had become something she couldn't quite define. The guest room was comfortable, decorated in neutral tones that felt deliberately impersonal. Olivia changed into pajamas and climbed into bed, but sleep remained elusive. Through the walls, she heard water running, James getting ready for bed, living his life mere feet away, while she lay here wearing his ring and telling his lies. Her phone buzzed. Ruby. How's the penthouse? Still think this is crazy? Olivia typed back, absolutely insane. Talk tomorrow. She set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling, watching shadows shift across unfamiliar space. This was temporary, she reminded herself, a means to an end. In 2 years, maybe less, they'd divorce quietly and return to their separate lives. The ring felt heavy on her finger. Outside, the city continued its endless movement, and Olivia Hart tried to convince herself that everything would stay neatly compartmentalized. She was already failing. The USCIS office smelled like disinfectant and anxiety. Olivia sat in the waiting gown, knee bouncing uncontrollably despite her best efforts at composure. James placed his hand over hers, stilling the movement. His palm was warm, steady, and she forced herself to take a breath. We've got this, he murmured, just like we practiced. They'd spent the last week preparing, quiz sessions over breakfast about his coffee preferences and her childhood pet's name, mock interviews where Nathan played overzealous immigration officer, awkward attempts at casual affection, learning how to hold hands without it feeling like a business transaction. None of it had prepared her for the weight of actually sitting here, about to lie to the federal government. Hart and Fitzgerald? A woman stood at the doorway, clipboard in hand. She was young, professional, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Nothing threatening about her appearance, yet Olivia's stomach clenched. They followed her down a sterile hallway into a small interview room. 2 chairs faced a desk where the officer would sit. A camera blinked red in the corner. Everything about the space was designed to make you feel watched, evaluated, found wanting. Have a seat, the woman said. The officer will be with you shortly. She left, closing the door with a soft click that sounded remarkably like a cell locking. James reached for Olivia's hand again. This time she gripped back, probably too hard, but he didn't flinch. Breathe, he whispered. I'm breathing. You're holding your breath. She released air she hadn't realized she'd trapped. What if they see through us? What if we mess up the story? What if... The door opened. A woman entered, and James went absolutely rigid beside her. She was striking in a severe way, with blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and ice-blue eyes that swept the room with practiced efficiency. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than Olivia's monthly rent, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how much power she held. Those cold eyes landed on James. Something flickered across her face, too quick for Olivia to identify. Then it was gone, replaced by professional neutrality. Mr. Fitzgerald, her voice was crisp, controlled. It's been a long time. James's hand had gone rigid in Olivia's.
Victoria. The name hit Olivia like cold water. Victoria, the ex-fiancée, the woman who'd left him at the rehearsal dinner 5 years ago. She was their immigration officer. Victoria settled into the chair across from them, opening a file with deliberate precision. "And you must be Miss Hart." Her gaze slid to Olivia, assessing, cataloging. "I'm Officer Palmer. I'll be conducting your interview today." Olivia's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Nice to meet you." "Yes." Victoria's smile was sharp as glass. "I'm sure it is." The air in the small room felt suddenly insufficient. James had released Olivia's hand, his posture rigidly formal now, and the loss of contact felt like abandonment. Victoria consulted her file. "Before we begin, I should disclose that Mr. Fitzgerald and I have a prior personal relationship. If either of you would like to request a different officer, that's within your rights." She said it like a challenge, like she knew they couldn't afford the delay. James found his voice. "That won't be necessary." "Wonderful." Victoria's pen hovered over her notepad. "Then let's begin. Miss Hart, when did you and Mr.
Gerald first meet? 8 months ago. A gallery opening in Chelsea. Which gallery? Olivia's mind went blank. They'd rehearsed this. She knew this. Why couldn't she remember? Clement Gallery, James supplied, on 22nd Street. Victoria's eyes narrowed fractionally. "I asked Miss Hart." "Right, yes, Clement Gallery." Olivia forced herself to maintain eye contact. "We were both looking at the same photograph. James made a comment about the composition. We started talking about architecture." "How romantic," Victoria made a note. "And when did this friendship become romantic?" "Our second date," James said. "Dinner at Piccola Italia. We talked until they started stacking chairs around us." "Again, Mr. Fitzgerald, I'd like Miss Hart to answer." Victoria leaned back, studying Olivia with unsettling focus. "Take your time." It felt like a trap. Every question, every pause, every flicker of Victoria's expression screamed that she was looking for inconsistencies, weaknesses, proof of fraud. "That's right," Olivia said. "Second date. I remember thinking he was different from anyone I'd dated before, more present, more interested in actual conversation than just—" She trailed off, uncertain how much detail was too much. "Then just what?" "Then just surface things." Victoria's pen scratched across paper. "How long after that dinner did you become intimate?" Heat flooded Olivia's cheeks. "I don't see how that's relevant." "Everything is relevant in determining the authenticity of your relationship, Miss Hart." Victoria's tone remained perfectly professional, but something gleamed in her eyes. "Would you prefer I ask Mr. Fitzgerald instead?" 3 weeks, Olivia said quietly. After 3 weeks. She felt James shift beside her, couldn't tell if it was surprise or discomfort. They hadn't discussed this level of detail, hadn't thought they'd need to. Victoria moved on with clinical precision. Questions about where James kept his coffee mugs, what side of the bed he slept on, whether he was a morning person. Details that felt invasive, too intimate for this sterile room and hostile audience. Olivia answered what she could, drawing on the week of study sessions and observation. James filled gaps when necessary, their responses aligning more often than not. Then Victoria reached into her file and pulled out a photograph. "Miss Hart, can you explain this?" It was a picture of Olivia at a restaurant, laughing across the table at someone. She recognized it immediately. Dinner with Marcus from the office, 2 months ago, discussing the community center project over Thai food. "That's my colleague, Marcus. We were working." "Working?" Victoria's eyebrow arched. "You appear quite comfortable together." "Because we're friends. We work on the same projects." "While engaged to Mr. Fitzgerald." "I wasn't engaged yet. That was 2 months ago." "Ah, yes, your engagement." Victoria folded her hands on the desk. "Tell me about the proposal. Spare no details." Olivia's mouth went dry. They'd practiced this too, had the story down perfectly. Sunday morning, his apartment, spontaneous and heartfelt. But with Victoria's cold eyes boring into her, with James tense as stone beside her, the rehearsed words felt flimsy as tissue paper. "It was a Sunday," she began. "We were making breakfast together. James had been quiet all morning, distracted. I thought something was wrong." "And was something wrong?" "No, he was nervous." Olivia glanced at James, found him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. He kept burning the eggs. Finally, he just turned off the stove and told me he had something to say. What exactly did he say? The specifics they'd rehearsed fled her mind. Panic clawed at her throat. Then James spoke, his voice low and sincere. I told her I'd spent 32 years thinking I understood what I wanted from life. Success, stability, control over my environment. Then I met her and realized I'd been building walls instead of a home. He wasn't looking at Victoria. He was looking at Olivia, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I told her she made me want to take down those walls, that I wanted to build something real with her, that I was terrified and certain at the same time. His hand found hers again, fingers interlacing. The room had gone very quiet. Victoria stared at them, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal something raw underneath. Pain, maybe, or recognition. I see. She closed the file with sharp finality. We'll need additional interviews, individual sessions, and a home visit. Olivia's heart plummeted. A home visit? Standard procedure when there are questions about the relationship's authenticity. Victoria stood, signaling the end of the interview. You'll receive notification of the date. Make sure you're both present. James rose, helping Olivia up with a hand at her elbow. Victoria? Officer Palmer, she corrected coldly. In this building, it's Officer Palmer. They were dismissed. The hallway felt like a gauntlet. Olivia didn't speak until they'd exited the building, the November air slapping her face with bitter cold. You didn't tell me she worked for immigration. I didn't know. James raked a hand through his hair, frustration radiating off him. Last I heard she was in D.C. I had no idea she'd transferred back. She's going to destroy us. You saw her face. I saw her face. He turned to Olivia, gripping her shoulders. We're not destroyed yet. We just need to be more prepared for the home visit. More convincing. More convincing? Olivia laughed, the sound brittle. James, she knows you. She'll see through everything. Then we make sure there's nothing to see through. His jaw set with determination. You're moving into the penthouse today. We fill it with your things, your life. We make it look so real she can't find a single crack. Olivia wanted to argue, to say this was spiraling beyond what she'd agreed to. But the alternative was a plane ticket to London and 6 years of work abandoned. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I'll move in today. James exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. We'll get through this. As they walked toward his car, Olivia glanced back at the government building. Somewhere inside, Victoria Calmer sat at her desk, holding their future in her perfectly manicured hands. And the woman had every reason to want to watch it burn. Ruby helped carry the last box into the penthouse, setting it down with more force than necessary. I still think this is insane.
You've mentioned that. Olivia unpacked books onto James's shelves, trying to make them look naturally integrated rather than obviously staged. Several times, because it bears repeating. Ruby crossed her arms, watching her best friend with concern etched across her features. You're moving in with a man you've known for 2 weeks, a man whose ex-fiancé now controls whether you stay in the country. I'm aware of the situation. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a disaster waiting to happen. Olivia stopped unpacking, a worn copy of her architecture textbook clutched in her hands. Her parents had given it to her for her 18th birthday. She'd carried it across an ocean through 6 years of building a new life. What else am I supposed to do? Ruby's expression softened. She moved closer, pulling Olivia into a hug that smelled like her familiar jasmine perfume. I know, I just worry about you. I worry about me too. Olivia squeezed back, then released her. But James is helping me. This arrangement helps both of us. Just don't forget it's an arrangement. Ruby glanced toward the hallway where James had disappeared with another load. Don't catch feelings for someone you're pretending to love. After Ruby left, Olivia stood in the living room surrounded by boxes and wondered if that warning had come too late. The past week had blurred the lines more than she'd anticipated. Learning someone's morning routine, their favorite songs, the way they took their coffee. These small intimacies felt less like research and more like genuine discovery. James emerged from the bedroom, carrying an armful of her clothes. "Where do you want these?" "Your closet, I guess. If Victoria checks, she'll expect my things mixed with yours." He nodded and disappeared again. Olivia followed, finding him making space on the racks with careful precision. His shirts shifted to one side, her dresses hung beside his jackets, the visual representation of lives intertwining. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this. We're in this together." He adjusted a hanger, not meeting her eyes. "Your problems are my problems now. That's how marriage works, right?" Except they weren't married, weren't even really engaged. This was performance art with federal consequences. Olivia's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Home visit scheduled for Friday, 10 a.m. Be prepared." That was fast. She showed James the message. 3 days? Then we have 3 days to make this place look like we've been living together for months. He surveyed the bedroom with tactical assessment. "We need photos, real ones, not staged. Nathan can help with that." "Nathan thinks I'm using you." James smiled slightly. "Nathan thinks everyone is using everyone. He's a pessimist with trust issues." He moved past her into the hallway. "But he's also my best friend, and he'll help if I ask." The rest of the day was spent in domestic choreography. Olivia's toiletries migrated to the bathroom counter, her toothbrush finding a home beside James's. Her sketches got pinned to a corkboard in the living room. Small touches that transformed his bachelor space into something shared. By evening, exhaustion had settled into Olivia's bones. She found James in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator like it held answers to questions he hadn't asked. "We should probably discuss sleeping arrangements," he said without turning around. The elephant in the room, the one detail they'd been avoiding. "The guest room is fine," Olivia started. "Victoria's specific she'd check the bedroom. If it looks like we're sleeping separately, that's a red flag." Heat crept up Olivia's neck. "So we just share the bed? Unless you have a better idea." He finally turned to face her, and his expression was carefully neutral. "I can take the couch after her visit, but during, we need to look authentic." The rational part of Olivia's brain knew he was right. The other part, the part that had been noticing the way his shirt fit across his shoulders and how his rare smiles transformed his entire face, screamed that sharing a bed was dangerous territory. "Okay," she heard her agree, "we'll make it work." That night, they lay on opposite edges of the mattress, a careful expanse of space between them. The bed was large enough that they didn't touch, but Olivia remained hyper-aware of every breath, every slight movement. "Can't sleep?" James asked, into the darkness. "Too much on my mind. Want to talk about it?" She did, desperately, but couldn't articulate the tangle of anxiety and something else, something warmer and more complicated, that had taken root in her chest. "Tell me something real," she said instead, "something not part of our story." Silence stretched long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. "I blame myself," he finally said, "for Victoria leaving. We'd been together 3 years, engaged for 6 months. She was pregnant. Olivia's breath caught. He hadn't mentioned that before. She miscarried a week before the wedding. I was in the middle of a major product launch, barely home, drowning in work while she was falling apart." His voice had gone flat, emotionless, in the way that meant too much emotion underneath. "At the rehearsal dinner, she told me she couldn't marry someone who'd choose his company over their family. Then she left. James, that wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? She needed me, and I wasn't there. I was building an empire while our life crumbled." He shifted, the mattress dipping slightly. "After that, I decided it was easier to focus on things I could control. Business, money, success. Those don't leave you at the altar." Olivia rolled onto her side, facing his silhouette in the darkness. "Is that why you agreed to this? Because it's controllable? A relationship with clear parameters and an expiration date? Maybe." He turned to face her too, and even in the dim light, she could see the vulnerability in his expression. "We're a mess," Olivia whispered. "Yeah." His hand found hers in the space between them, fingers linking loosely. We're a mess that makes sense together. They fell asleep like that, hands connected, breathing synchronized, the space between them both vast and negligible. Morning arrived with harsh sunlight and the
Buzz of the doorbell. James groaned, extracting himself from the bed. Olivia realized with a start that sometime during the night they'd migrated toward each other. His arm had been draped across her waist, her head tucked against his shoulder. The doorbell rang again, insistent. James pulled on sweatpants and stumbled toward the door while Olivia tried to process waking up in his arms and how natural it had felt. Voices from the living room. James, surprised. A woman, sharp and familiar. Olivia's stomach dropped. She threw on James's shirt from yesterday and emerged to find Victoria standing in the entryway, professional suit immaculate despite the early hour. Officer Palmer. James's voice was carefully controlled. We weren't expecting you until Friday. Home visits can be unannounced. Victoria's eyes swept the apartment with predatory precision. They landed on Olivia, took in the oversized shirt and bare legs and disheveled hair. Miss Hart, I hope I'm not interrupting. You are, Olivia said, lifting her chin. But please, come in. Victoria moved through the space like she was cataloging evidence. She paused at the corkboard, studying Olivia's sketches, opened the coat closet, saw their jackets hanging together, drifted into the kitchen, where 2 coffee mugs sat in the sink from last night. Cozy, Victoria commented. When did you move in, Miss Hart? Yesterday. We thought it made sense to live together before the wedding. How practical. Victoria opened the refrigerator, noted the mixture of contents. And where will the wedding be? Olivia and James exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed this detail. We haven't decided, James said smoothly. Olivia wants something small, intimate. My mother wants the plaza. We're still negotiating. Victoria hummed non-committally and headed down the hallway, toward the bedroom. Olivia's pulse hammered as they followed. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled from sleep. Both nightstands held books. Her clothes peeked from the closet. It looked authentic, because it was authentic. Victoria stood in the doorway, her mask slipping just enough to reveal something painful underneath. This was supposed to be my room once, she said quietly. Then, louder, professional again. Everything appears in order, for now. She turned to face them, and her eyes held dark promise. But understand this, I will be watching. Every detail, every interaction. If this relationship is fraudulent, I will find the proof. After she left, Olivia sank onto the bed, adrenaline making her hands shake. She came early on purpose, to catch us off guard. James sat beside her, their shoulders touching. She saw us together, actually together. That helps our case. Or it makes her more determined to tear us apart. Olivia looked at him, fear and something else warring in her chest. What if we can't convince her? What if nothing we do is enough? James took her face in his hands, the gesture so gentle it made her breath catch. Then we'll face it together, whatever happens. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and the air between them felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. The line between performance and reality was disappearing. 4 days until the final interview. Olivia stared at her calendar, stomach churning. The same day as her architecture presentation, the community center project that could define her career, scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. The immigration interview that would determine her future, set for 10 in the morning. She'd asked Henderson if they could reschedule the presentation. He'd said no with barely concealed irritation, reminding her that the board members had limited availability and this project was already delayed due to her visa complications. Translation: fix your personal problems without disrupting the company. James found her at the kitchen table at 6 in the morning, surrounded by presentation boards and immigration documents, looking between them like she could somehow split herself in 2. You haven't slept. He set down coffee she hadn't asked for but desperately needed. Can't, too much to prepare. She gestured at the chaos. The interview is at 10. If it runs long, I'll never make it to the office by 2. But if I prioritize the presentation, Victoria will take it as proof I don't care about our relationship.
His hand covered hers, warm and steady. Then we make the bad choice. You go to both. We get to the interview early, answer everything quickly and efficiently, and I'll drive you to your office myself. James, if the interview runs over, it won't. I'll make sure of it. She looked up at him, at the determination in his hazel eyes, and felt something crack open in her chest. When had he become her safe place? When had this arrangement transformed into something that felt like partnership? Why are you doing this? The question emerged softer than intended. Really doing this? You could have found anyone to play fiancé for your mother. Why me? James was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. Because when I saw you in that coffee shop, terrified of losing everything you'd built, I recognized that fear. He met her eyes. I spent 5 years building walls, convincing myself that control and isolation were the same as safety. Then you spilled coffee on my shirt and looked at me like I was a person instead of a bank account or a business prospect. I ruined your shirt. You saw me. His voice had gone rough. Really saw me. And I thought maybe helping you meant I could stop hiding. The air between them felt heavy with words unsaid. Olivia opened her mouth, uncertain what would come out, when his phone buzzed. James glanced at it, and his expression shifted. It's Victoria. She wants to meet, just me. Dread pooled in Olivia's stomach. When? Today, lunch. He stood, already typing a response. She says it's informal, off the record. That's a trap. Probably. He sent the message. But refusing looks worse than going. After he left for the office, Olivia tried to focus on her presentation. The community center design was solid, innovative, exactly the kind of work she dreamed of doing. But every time she looked at the blueprints, she saw James's penthouse sketched in the margins from a night she couldn't sleep and he'd found her drawing. Her phone rang. Ruby. "Please, tell me you're surviving," her friend said without preamble. Define surviving. That bad? Olivia leaned back in her chair, exhaustion making everything blurry. I don't know what's real anymore. We're supposed to be pretending, but it doesn't feel like pretending. He holds my hand and I forget it's for show. We fall asleep talking and I wake up in his arms, and it feels right. Oh, Liv. I know, I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're human. Ruby's voice gentled. But you need to protect yourself. This has an expiration date. Does it, though? We're married for 2 years minimum. That's not nothing. It's not real. But it felt real. That was the problem. Across town, James sat in a small cafe, watching Victoria approach with measured steps. She'd chosen somewhere public, neutral territory, but nothing about this felt neutral. Thank you for meeting me. She sat, ordered tea with precision. I imagine you're wondering why I asked. The thought crossed my mind. Victoria studied him with those ice blue eyes that had once looked at him with warmth. I need to tell you something. Off the record, like I said. James waited. I came back to New York 3 months ago. I transferred specifically to be closer to you. The admission cost her something. He could see it in the tightness around her mouth. I was going to reach out, tell you I'd made a mistake leaving, ask if we could try again. His chest constricted. Victoria. Then you showed up in my office with her. She said it without malice, just stating fact. With Olivia, looking at her the way you used to look at me. That was 5 years ago. We've both moved on. Have we? Victoria leaned forward. James, I know you. I know when you're lying. And in that interview, you weren't lying. What you said about her making you want to tear down walls, about being terrified and certain at the same time, that was real. James's mouth had gone dry. What's your point? My point is I need to know the truth. Not for the case, for me. Her voice dropped. Is this fake? Did you find some desperate woman and propose a marriage of convenience? Or did you actually fall in love when I wasn't looking? The question hung between them, sharp as glass. James thought about Olivia sketching in his living room, light from the windows turning her auburn hair to fire, about her laugh when he made terrible jokes, about waking up with her in his arms, feeling like coming home after years of wandering. I don't know, he said honestly. It started as an arrangement, a solution to mutual problems, but somewhere along the way, it became something else. Does she know that? I don't think so. Victoria sat back, something like resignation crossing her features. Then you're an idiot, because I've seen the way she looks at you too, and she's just as lost as you are. She stood, gathering her bag. I'll approve your visa, James. Conditional green card, 2-year review, all standard. But not because I believe your story is foolproof, because I believe you deserve a chance at happiness, even if it's not with me. Victoria, wait. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't thank me. Don't apologize. Just promise me something. What? Don't waste this. Don't let fear make you push her away like you pushed me away when things got hard. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Be better than we were. She left him sitting alone with coffee going cold and the realization that he was in far deeper than any arrangement allowed. When James returned to the penthouse that evening, he found Olivia exactly where he'd left her, now surrounded by even more papers. She looked up, exhaustion and anxiety written across her face. How did it go? He wanted to tell her, wanted to lay out everything Victoria had said and ask what they were really doing here, what this had become. But she had a presentation in 2 days and an interview that would determine her future. Adding his emotional confusion to that burden felt selfish. Fine, just wanted to clarify some procedural things. He moved behind her, gently massaging tension from her shoulders. How's the presentation coming? She leaned into his touch with a sigh that did dangerous things to his composure. It's good, really good, actually. If I can just make it there to deliver it. You will, I promise. That night, they lay in bed with the lights off, both staring at the ceiling. James, Olivia's voice was small in the darkness. Are you scared? Of the interview? Of everything? Of what happens after? He rolled toward her, finding her hand beneath the covers. Terrified. Me too. She shifted closer, and he pulled her against his chest, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. They'd done this before, fallen asleep tangled together, but tonight felt different, weighted with things they weren't saying. Whatever happens, James murmured against her hair, we face it together. Olivia's arm tightened around his waist. Together. It was a promise neither of them knew if they could keep. 2 doors down, James's phone lit up with a message from Victoria. Interview scheduled 10 a.m. Thursday. Come prepared. This is your final chance. And across town, Olivia's boss sent an email she wouldn't see until morning. Board moved presentation to 11 a.m. Don't be late. The same time as the interview. The collision course was set. Olivia saw the email at 6 in the morning. Her presentation had been moved to 11, the exact time they'd be sitting in front of Victoria answering questions that would determine if she got to stay in the country. She stood in the bathroom, phone clutched in shaking hands, feeling the walls close in. This was impossible, literally, physically impossible. James appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the interview in a charcoal suit that made him look devastatingly professional. What's wrong? She showed him the email without speaking. His jaw tightened. Call Henderson. Tell him you have a federal immigration interview. He has to understand. You don't know Henderson. Olivia set down her phone with careful control. He's already annoyed about my visa situation affecting the project timeline. If I miss this presentation, he'll replace me. 6 months of work?
Gone. Then we reschedule the interview. Victoria specifically said final chance. We can't reschedule. She laughed, the sound brittle. I have to choose. My career or my future in this country? No. James crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. We'll figure this out. What if you present first, then we go to the interview? It takes 30 minutes to get from my office to the USCIS building. If the presentation runs even slightly over, we'll miss the interview slot. Victoria will mark it as failure to appear. Then I'll go alone. I'll explain that you had an unmissable work obligation, which proves exactly what she thinks, that this isn't real, that I prioritize career over our relationship, that we're committing fraud. Olivia pulled away from him, anxiety spiraling into panic. There's no solution here. Every choice is wrong.
James was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice had gone flat. Then go to your presentation. What? Go. To your presentation. He stepped back, his expression shuddering closed. Your architecture career is real. This arrangement is temporary. You said it yourself. You've worked 6 months on that project. Don't throw it away for something that has an expiration date. The words hit like a slap. Olivia stared at him, trying to understand the sudden distance in his eyes. So that's it? You're just giving up? I'm being practical. That's what this has always been, right? A practical solution to mutual problems. His tone was carefully neutral, which somehow made it worse. I'll handle Victoria, you handle your career. James, that's not... It's fine, Olivia, really. He moved past her into the bedroom, started gathering his wallet and keys with mechanical precision. This is probably better anyway. Clean separation of priorities. She followed him, anger mixing with hurt and confusion. What are you talking about? Clean separation? I'm talking about remembering what this actually is. A business arrangement. I help you stay in the country. You help satisfy my mother's expectations about settling down. That's the deal. That stopped being the deal weeks ago, and you know it. He froze, back to her, shoulders rigid. Did it? Yes, you know it did. Sleeping in the same bed, learning everything about each other. Yesterday you told me I made you want to stop hiding. I shouldn't have said that. He turned, and his expression was so carefully blank it made her chest ache. I got confused, started thinking this was something it's not. But Victoria's meeting yesterday reminded me what's real. Olivia's breath caught. What did she say to you? It doesn't matter. It clearly does. You came back different, distant. James ran a hand through his hair, frustration finally cracking his composure. She asked if this was real, if I actually loved you, or if we were committing fraud. And I realized I didn't know the answer. The confession hung between them, raw and painful. So you're pushing me away? Olivia said quietly, just like she said you would. What? Victoria told me when we had coffee. She said you push people away when you're afraid of losing them, that you did it to her, and you do it to me too. Tears burned behind Olivia's eyes. You met with Victoria. She called me, wanted to talk woman to woman. She told me about the miscarriage, about how you blamed yourself, about how you choose isolation over vulnerability every time things get complicated. She had no right. She was trying to help, or warn me. I don't know which. Olivia's voice cracked. But she was right. The second things feel too real, you retreat behind walls and call it practicality. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You're literally telling me to prioritize my career over our relationship, over us, so you can maintain emotional distance and pretend none of this matters. It's fake, Olivia. This entire thing is built on lies. He was shouting now, his careful control completely shattered. We're lying to the government, lying to my mother, lying to ourselves about what this is. Then tell me. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Tell me what this is, what I am to you, because I can't figure it out anymore. James stared at her, jaw working, something desperate in his eyes. Tell me, she repeated, softer now. Please, I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him everything. I don't know what you are to me, and that terrifies me, more than losing the company or disappointing my mother or any of it. Because the last time I let someone matter this much, she left and took a piece of me I never got back. Olivia's hands trembled as she reached for him. I'm not Victoria. No, you're worse. His voice had gone rough. Because this was supposed to be temporary and controllable and safe. But you got under my skin anyway, made me want things I promised myself I'd never want again. What things? Instead of answering, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative like she'd imagined their first real kiss might be. It was desperate and fierce, his hands tangling in her hair, her fingers gripping his suit jacket, 6 weeks of tension and denied feelings exploding between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Olivia's lips felt swollen, and her heart raced like she'd been running. That, James said raggedly, that's what I want. You, really you. Not fake, not pretend. But I don't know how to have that without eventually destroying it. Olivia cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Then let's destroy it together. Let's be messy and complicated and figure it out as we go. What about the interview? Your presentation? Reality crashed back in. Olivia checked her watch. 7:30. The interview was at 10, the presentation at 11. I don't know, she whispered. I still don't know. Her phone rang. Henderson. Miss Hart, I need confirmation you'll be at the presentation. The board is already assembling. Olivia looked at James, at the vulnerability in his expression, at 6 weeks of carefully constructed walls finally crumbling. I'll be there, she heard her say. Henderson hung up. James stepped back, his face closing off again. Don't do that, Olivia said sharply. Don't shut me out because I chose to attend a work obligation. I'm not. You are. I can see it happening. She grabbed her jacket, her presentation boards. I'm going to the interview first, then I'm going to the presentation. I'll make both work somehow. Olivia, that's impossible. Then watch me do it.
Impossible. She headed for the door, then turned back. And James, when this is over, when both disasters are behind us, we're going to have a real conversation about what this is. No more hiding, no more walls. Agreed? He nodded slowly. Agreed. Good. She kissed him quickly, fiercely. Now let's go convince your ex-fiancé that we're madly in love. We are, though, he said quietly. She froze. What? Madly in love? Or I am anyway, with you. Really, not fake. He met her eyes. I should have said that first instead of kissing you. Olivia's heart performed acrobatics in her chest. You're telling me this now? Right now? When we have to leave in 5 minutes? Terrible timing, I know. The worst timing. Sorry. She crossed back to him, kissed him again, softer this time. Tell me again later, after we survive today. I will, I promise. They left the penthouse together, hands linked, heading into the collision of career and immigration and feelings neither of them knew how to name. The interview would be brutal. The presentation would be rushed. Everything could fall apart. But for the first time since this started, Olivia felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope. And standing beside James in the elevator, watching the numbers descend, she realized Ruby had been wrong. This wasn't an arrangement with an expiration date. This was the beginning of something that might actually last, if they survived the next 4 hours. The USCIS building looked the same as before, sterile and imposing against the gray morning sky. Olivia's hands wouldn't stop shaking. James noticed, covering them with his own as they walked through the security checkpoint. His touch steadied her, reminded her why they were doing this. Because somewhere between coffee shop meetings and shared bedrooms, between rehearsed stories and real confessions, they'd stopped pretending. Victoria was waiting in the same interview room. She wore navy again, her blonde hair severe, but something in her expression had softened since their last meeting. Resignation, maybe? Or acceptance. Mr. Fitzgerald, Miss Hart, please sit. They took the same chairs as before. This time, James kept hold of Olivia's hand on top of the table, a clear statement of unity. Victoria opened her file with clinical precision. This is your final interview. I'll be asking questions separately and together. Answer honestly and completely. Understood? Yes, they said in unison. Miss Hart, let's start with you. Tell me about the first time you knew you loved James. The question caught Olivia off guard. Not when did you fall in love, but when did you know? Subtle difference, devastating implications. She glanced at James, found him watching her with those hazel eyes that had become her favorite feature. 3 weeks ago, she said quietly. I woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare about my parents, the accident. I don't have them often anymore, but when I do, they're vivid. Victoria made a note, but her expression held something like sympathy. James woke up too. He didn't ask questions, didn't tell me it was just a dream. He just held me until I stopped shaking. Then he made tea the way my mother used to make it, with honey and too much milk.
Olivia's throat tightened with the memory. I never told him how my mother made tea. He just knew somehow, or guessed. And I realized this man I'd known for 3 weeks understood me better than people I'd known for years. That's when you knew, Victoria said softly. That's when I knew. Victoria turned to James. And you? When did you know? James was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on Olivia's hand. The second week. She was sketching in my living room, completely absorbed. I brought her coffee, and she didn't even notice, just kept drawing, humming something under her breath. He smiled at the memory. I sat and watched her work for 20 minutes. She was designing a playground for the community center project, adding details that would make it accessible for kids with disabilities. Extra wide ramps, textured surfaces for visual guidance, quiet spaces for sensory overload. Those details weren't in the official brief, Olivia said. I know. That's what made it matter. James looked at Victoria directly. She was designing something nobody asked for because it was the right thing to do. Because she builds homes, not just buildings. And I thought, this is the person I want to build a life with. The room had gone very quiet. Victoria studied them with an expression Olivia couldn't read. You understand that if I approve this visa, you're committing to a 2-year conditional period. During that time, I or another officer can investigate at any point. If the marriage dissolved before the 2 years, Miss Hart will be deported with no appeal process. We understand, James said. And you're prepared for that commitment, both of you? Olivia met his eyes, saw 6 weeks of shared space and learned intimacies, saw the vulnerability he'd shown her this morning, the confession that had changed everything. Yes, she said firmly. Victoria closed the file. I need to speak with James alone. Miss Hart, please wait outside. Panic fluttered in Olivia's chest. This felt like a trap, like separation designed to find inconsistencies. But she had no choice. She squeezed James's hand once and left. The hallway clock showed 10:40. If this ran past 11, she'd miss the start of her presentation. Henderson would be furious. The board would think her unprofessional. But sitting on that uncomfortable plastic chair, all she could think about was James alone with Victoria, facing questions she couldn't help him answer. Inside the room, James watched Victoria with careful attention. You told her, Victoria said without preamble, about the miscarriage? No, you did, when you met with her without telling me. Victoria had the grace to look slightly guilty. I wanted to see if she cared enough about you to meet me despite the risk. She did. That told me something. What did it tell you? That she's either an excellent actress or genuinely in love with you. Victoria leaned back in her chair. I'm inclined to believe the latter. James said nothing, waiting. I made a mistake 5 years ago, Victoria continued. I left because I was scared and hurting, and I blamed you for something that wasn't your fault. I've regretted it every day since. She met his eyes. I came back to New York hoping we could try again. But watching you with her, seeing how you look at her, how you protect her, that's not something you can fake. Victoria.
I'm approving the visa, James. Conditional green card, 2-year review period, standard conditions. You'll receive the documentation within 3 weeks. The relief was so sudden and complete, it left him momentarily speechless. But I need you to understand something, Victoria said, her voice softening. This woman loves you, really loves you, not the arrangement or the convenience, and you love her the same way. Don't waste this because you're afraid of being hurt again. I won't, James said quietly. I promise. Good. She stood, extending her hand. Be happy. You deserve it. He shook her hand, saw the finality in the gesture. You deserve it too. Maybe, she smiled, sad but genuine. Now go get Miss Hart. I imagine she's panicking in the hallway. James found Olivia pacing, chewing her thumbnail, checking her phone every 30 seconds. We're approved, he said. She spun toward him. What? Conditional green card. 2 years. We're approved. Olivia launched herself at him, and he caught her, spinning her once in the sterile government hallway.
She was laughing and crying at the same time, her face buried in his neck. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "You did it," he set her down gently. "Now go, your presentation." Reality crashed back. Olivia checked her watch. 11:15. She was already late. "Come with me," she said suddenly. "What?" "Come with me, to the presentation. I want you there." James didn't hesitate. "Let's go." They ran, out of the building, into James's car, through Manhattan traffic that was mercifully light for once. He drove with focused precision while Olivia reviewed her notes, trying to calm her racing heart. They arrived at her office at 11:40. Henderson was going to kill her. The conference room was on the 3rd floor. Olivia burst through the doors, James right behind her, to find the board members looking irritated and Henderson looking murderous. "Miss Hart, how kind of you to join us." "I'm so sorry. I had an immigration emergency, yes, your colleague mentioned." Henderson gestured curtly to the presentation screen. "You have 20 minutes. Make them count." Olivia moved to the front of the room, spreading out her materials with hands that had finally stopped shaking. James took a seat in the back, giving her an encouraging nod. She took a breath and began. "The community center isn't just a building, it's a promise to create space where everyone belongs, where accessibility isn't an afterthought but a foundation." She clicked through slides showing the design. Wide ramps and textured surfaces, quiet rooms for sensory overwhelm, natural lighting that didn't trigger migraines, gardens at multiple heights for wheelchair access. "We're not designing for an abstract demographic. We're designing for Marcus's daughter who has cerebral palsy, for the teenager down the street with autism who needs predictable spaces, for the elderly woman who uses a walker and wants to attend community events without assistance." The board members leaned forward, their irritation fading into interest. "This isn't more expensive, it's smarter. Every modification we've made serves multiple purposes. The ramps work for wheelchairs and strollers. The textured surfaces help visually impaired visitors and reduce slipping. The quiet rooms become nursing spaces, or prayer rooms, or just places to breathe." She clicked to the final slide, a rendering of the completed center, filled with people of all abilities, all ages, all backgrounds. "A place to call home," she said quietly. "That's what we're building, not just for some people, for everyone." Silence. Then the board chair started clapping. The others joined in. Henderson's expression had shifted from anger to something like respect. "Miss Hart, that was exceptional. The board will deliberate and inform you of their decision by end of week." After they filed out, Olivia sagged against the presentation table, adrenaline crash making her legs weak. James crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "You were incredible." "I was late and flustered and probably sweating through my shirt." "You were passionate and brilliant and exactly what they needed to see." He tilted her chin up. "I'm so proud of you." She kissed him, right there in the empty conference room, not caring if anyone saw. "We did it," she said against his lips. "Both of us. We survived the impossible day." "We did. Together." Henderson appeared in the doorway, clearing his throat. Olivia and James sprang apart like guilty teenagers. "Miss Hart, I'm approving your continued work on the project, pending board decision, of course." He glanced at James. "And I assume this is the fiancé who caused the scheduling conflict." "James Fitzgerald." James extended his hand. "Sorry for the complications." Immigration issues are hardly simple. My own parents immigrated from Ireland decades ago. I remember the stress. Henderson shook James's hand, then addressed Olivia. "Take the rest of the day. You've earned it." Outside, the afternoon sun broke through clouds, turning the city golden. Olivia and James walked to a nearby park, collapsing onto a bench, both exhausted and exhilarated. "So," Olivia said eventually, "we're engaged for real now. 2 years minimum. That's a long time to pretend." "Good thing we're not pretending anymore." James laced his fingers through hers. "I meant what I said this morning. I love you. Really, genuinely, terrifyingly love you." "Terrifyingly?" "You make me want things I swore I'd never want again. Permanence, partnership, a future that doesn't have an exit strategy built in. Olivia shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. I love you too, have for weeks, was too scared to admit it. Not anymore? Not anymore. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city move around them. Somewhere across town, Victoria was probably filing paperwork. Ruby was probably worrying. Nathan was probably laughing at how predictable this all was. But here, in this moment, Olivia felt only peace. We should probably actually plan a wedding, James said eventually. Your mother will want something elaborate. She'll want to actually meet you first, he grinned. Think you're ready for that? After today, I'm ready for anything. 6 months later, Olivia stood in the partially constructed community center, hard hat slightly crooked, reviewing structural plans with the foreman. The space was taking shape exactly as she'd envisioned. Wide doorways framed in steel, ramps poured with textured concrete, windows positioned to maximize natural lighting.
Without creating glare. Her phone buzzed. James, bringing lunch, Thai or pizza? She smiled, typing back. Thai, extra spring rolls. The past half year had been a whirlwind of adjustment and discovery, learning to share space permanently, not temporarily, navigating the 1,000 small compromises that came with building a real relationship, fighting about whose turn it was to do dishes, and making up in ways that left them both breathless. It wasn't the arrangement they'd started with, it was infinitely better. Ruby had eventually forgiven Olivia for being right about James. Nathan had admitted he'd known from the beginning they'd fall for each other. Henderson had approved her promotion to senior architect after the board unanimously selected her community center design. Everything had fallen into place with surprising ease, except for one thing. The 2-year interview loomed 18 months away, and despite Victoria's approval, Olivia sometimes woke in the middle of the night, terrified that someone would realize their relationship had started as fraud and take it all away. James found those fears with gentle patience, talking her down from panic, reminding her that what they had now was undeniably real. But real didn't erase how it began. She was reviewing electrical plans when James arrived, takeout bags in hand, looking unfairly attractive in casual jeans and a fitted shirt. You're supposed to be wearing a hard hat on the construction site, she said, even as she kissed him hello. I'm not staying long enough to get hit by falling debris. He handed her pad thai and chopsticks. Though I do have news. Something in his tone made her pause mid-bite. Good news or bad news? Depends on perspective. My mother wants to meet you, this weekend, for dinner. Olivia had successfully avoided meeting Mrs. Fitzgerald for 6 months through careful scheduling conflicts and strategic work obligations. Not because James hadn't tried to arrange it, but because meeting his mother made everything feel terrifyingly permanent. This weekend, she repeated. She's insisting, says she refuses to attend a wedding for a daughter-in-law she's never met. James settled beside her on a stack of lumber. We don't have to go if you're not ready. No, we should, you're right. Olivia set down her food, suddenly not hungry. What if she hates me? She won't hate you. She'll probably interrogate you about grandchildren and wedding timelines, but she won't hate you. That's not reassuring. He laughed, pulling her against his side. She's going to love you. How could she not? That weekend, Olivia stood outside an elegant brownstone in the Upper East Side, smoothing down the dress she'd changed 3 times, wishing they could reschedule for the 100th time. James squeezed her hand. Breathe, it's just dinner. With your mother, who thinks we've been together for over a year, who has no idea this started as an arrangement. Which doesn't matter, because it's not an arrangement anymore. He turned her to face him. We're real, Olivia. This is real. Stop waiting for it to be taken away. Before she could respond, the door opened. Mrs. Fitzgerald was elegant in the way only old money could achieve, with silver hair styled perfectly and pearls that probably cost more than Olivia's car. But her smile was warm, genuine, transforming her entire face. James! She pulled him into a hug, then turned to Olivia. And you must be Olivia. I've been trying to meet you for months. I'm sorry about that. Work has been demanding, I'm sure. James mentioned you're an architect. How wonderful. She ushered them inside to a home that somehow managed to feel both expensive and comfortable. Come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready.
The evening passed more easily than Olivia had feared. Mrs. Fitzgerald asked about the community center with genuine interest, shared embarrassing stories about James's childhood that made him groan, and didn't once mention grandchildren or wedding dates. Over dessert, she studied them with the same hazel eyes James had inherited. "I have to say, I'm relieved." James frowned. "About what?" "About you, darling. After Victoria, you closed yourself off completely. I worried you'd never let anyone in again." She smiled at Olivia. "But watching you two together, the way you communicate without words, how he looks at you when you're not paying attention, that's real partnership. That's what I'd hoped you'd find." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I haven't started planning the wedding." Mrs. Fitzgerald's expression turned mischievous. "Though I'm thinking spring. Garden ceremony, perhaps?" James laughed. "We'll let you know, Mom." Driving home, Olivia felt lighter than she had in months. "That wasn't terrible," she admitted. "Told you she'd love you." She loved the version of us that's been together over a year, the version that's real. "We are real." James pulled into their building's parking garage. "Olivia, when are you going to stop punishing yourself for how this started?" "I'm not." "You are. Every time things get good, you remind yourself it began as a lie. But relationships change. People change. We're not the same people who made a desperate arrangement in a coffee shop." He was right. She knew he was right. But the fear lingered. That night, lying in bed in the penthouse that had become their home, Olivia traced patterns on James's chest. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "About the 2-year interview. About what happens if they dig deeper into how we met." "Then we tell the truth." His hand covered hers. "We started as an arrangement. We fell in love along the way. That's not fraud. That's just how life works sometimes. And if they don't believe us, then we fight, together, like we do everything now." He tilted her chin up. "I'm not losing you over a technicality. I'm not losing you at all." Olivia kissed him, pouring 6 months of love and fear and hope into it. "Promise?" "Promise." 18 months later, they returned to the USCIS building. The community center was complete and thriving. Olivia had been promoted again. James's company had expanded internationally. They'd gotten married in a small ceremony with Ruby and Nathan as witnesses, followed by a larger celebration that satisfied Mrs. Fitzgerald's social requirements. They'd built a life that was undeniably, completely real. Victoria wasn't their interviewing officer this time. A middle-aged man named Officer Martinez reviewed their file with professional efficiency. "You were granted conditional status 2 years ago based on
engagement. You've since married. How has the relationship progressed?" James and Olivia exchanged glances. They'd prepared for this, practiced answers, but suddenly the rehearsed responses felt inadequate. "We bought a house," Olivia said, "in Brooklyn. It needed renovation, which was a disaster because we have completely different opinions on tile choices." James grinned. She won the tile argument. "We adopted a cat, even though James is allergic. He takes antihistamines daily and pretends he doesn't love her."
I definitely love the cat.
"We fight about stupid things like who left dishes in the sink. We make up and promise to do better. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't." Olivia took James's hand. "We're messy and imperfect and figuring it out as we go." Martinez made notes, his expression neutral. Officer Palmer noted in her initial report some concerns about the relationship's origins. She's since been promoted and transferred, but her observations remain part of your file. Olivia's stomach clenched. Here it was, the moment where everything unraveled. "The relationship began unconventionally," Martinez continued, but her final assessment stated, and I quote, "While the initial arrangement was transactional, I observed genuine emotional connection develop over the interview period. Recommend approval with standard 2-year conditional period." He looked up from the file. "Based on the evidence provided and this interview, I'm approving your permanent resident status, Miss Hart. No further conditions." Relief flooded through Olivia, so completely she felt lightheaded. "Really?" she managed. "Really. Congratulations." Martinez stamped the approval with bureaucratic finality. "You'll receive your green card in the mail within 6 weeks." Outside, Olivia collapsed onto a bench, laughing and crying simultaneously. James sat beside her, arm around her shoulders, his own relief palpable. "We did it," she said. "For real this time. Permanently."
Permanently.
He echoed.
No more conditions, no more fear of deportation. You're staying. I'm staying. She turned to face him, and not because of a visa or an arrangement or anything, except that this is home. Your home. James kissed her softly. You've been home since you spilled coffee on my shirt and looked at me like I was worth noticing.
Best coffee spill of my life.
They sat in the sunlight, watching the city move around them, no longer running from interviews or deadlines or fear, just existing in the peace of permanence. Olivia thought about Victoria sometimes, wondered if she'd found her own happiness, hoped she had. The woman had given them a chance when she could have destroyed everything out of jealousy or hurt. Instead, she'd chosen kindness, had seen something real beneath the arrangement and protected it. We should send her a thank you card, Olivia said suddenly. James looked confused. Who? Victoria, for approving us, for seeing what we couldn't see yet.
You think she'd want to hear from us?
I think she deserves to know we made it, that her faith in us wasn't misplaced. They sent the card that afternoon, a simple note thanking her for her fairness and wishing her well. Victoria never responded, but 3 months later, Olivia received a wedding invitation. Victoria Palmer was marrying an environmental lawyer named Christopher. The ceremony would be in Boston. They didn't attend, but they sent a generous gift and a card that said simply, wishing you all the happiness you deserve. 5 years after that coffee spill, Olivia stood in the living room of their Brooklyn brownstone, surrounded by blueprints for her latest project. James worked at the dining table, video call with Tokyo playing through his laptop speakers. Their cat, creatively named Architect, slept on a pile of Olivia's sketches. It was mundane, ordinary, perfect. The doorbell rang. Ruby arrived with Nathan, carrying wine and Thai food, ready for their weekly dinner tradition. How was the final inspection? Ruby asked, referencing Olivia's newest community center in the Bronx. Perfect. Opens next month. Olivia poured wine while James ordered Nathan to stop trying to feed the cat spring rolls. You're all coming to the opening, right? Wouldn't miss it, Nathan said, though I still think you should have named it after yourself. It's not about me, it's about the community. James appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. She's too humble. The mayor specifically requested her for this project. Because the first one was successful. That's not humble, that's fact-based. They argued about it through dinner, the comfortable bickering of people who knew each other completely. Ruby updated them on her latest design contract. Nathan complained about his new assistant. James told a story about his mother trying to set up his younger cousin with increasingly inappropriate matches. Normal. Real. Home. After Ruby and Nathan left, Olivia and James cleaned up together in comfortable silence, moving around each other with the practiced ease of years. Happy? James asked, drying the last plate. Olivia looked around their kitchen, at the life they'd built from desperate beginnings, at the man who'd offered her an arrangement and given her everything. Incredibly happy. Good. He pulled her close, swaying slightly to music only he could hear. Because I'm planning to keep you happy for the next 60 years or so. Only 60. Fine, 70. I'm ambitious. She laughed against his shoulder, breathing in the scent that meant safety and home and future. They started with a lie that became truth, an arrangement that became love, a temporary solution that became permanent joy. Sometimes the best foundations were built on shaky ground. Sometimes you spilled coffee on a stranger and find forever. Sometimes fake became the realest thing you'd ever known. And sometimes, just sometimes, the immigration officer was your fiancé's ex, and instead of destroying everything, she helped build something better than either of you had imagined possible. Olivia held tight to James and thought about beginnings and endings and all the messy, beautiful middle parts that made life worth living. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. Really, not fake. Really, not fake. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with evening activity. Inside, 2 people who'd pretended their way into reality danced in their kitchen, grateful for coffee spills, desperate proposals, and second chances neither had known they needed. Home wasn't a country or a building. Home was this, right here, right now, forever.